Hi everyone, this is Jason Zach from the Nathaniel School of Music. In this lesson, we are going to take a melody, a chord progression, a lick, and a riff. There are different approaches or different things to keep in mind for each of these. So I've divided it and I've included a popular song for each of them. For the melody, we are going to pick Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz. We're going to do a really nice song by Toto called Africa. For the chord progression, for the riff, we are going to do a nice rock anthem, Carry On My Wayward Son. And lick, we'll just make up something bluesy along the way. So what we're going to do is you learn that, we learn how to play it, and then we look at what are the methods to practice this? How do you transpose this? How do you approach practicing it basically on all scales? So one of the most important goals for a piano player is to do whatever we have to do on all the scales, especially when it's a smaller portion of music. I understand if it's an entire song, it's going to take some time to do it on even one scale, let alone all the 12. So, if it's a small phrase, then I think you can put in the effort to do it on all 12, and then you will develop that natural confidence to tackle a new piece of music that hits you. And you can play that on whatever scale. Playing the melody on whichever scale will not be an issue or should not become an issue. Rather, it should become an opportunity, because the way music sounds on F sharp will be very different than how it sounds on F, considering the feeling of the keys. Some keys have a different black and white note alignment, like F sharp major. So your fingers will move differently than F major. Even playing the scales has a different fingering, isn't it? F major you play 4 and then 4, while F sharp you start with your index finger generally. C major you play 3 and then you cross after 3. So if you play scales, if each scale position itself is different, imagine melodies. It's going to definitely feel different, but it'll sound the same. It's going to be the same tune. So before we get started, it'll be nice if you can consider getting my handwritten notes for this entire tutorial, and also downloading a notation for each of these, where we've taken the time to notate it on every single key. So you'll be able to practice it easily on whichever scale, and you'll have a good resource. And you'll also be given a MIDI file, so you can import that, slow it down, and play around with the data. Okay, so before we get started, it'll be nice if you can consider hitting that subscribe button, turn on the bell icon for regular notifications, and let's get cracking. So we are going to first start with the melody, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So if you take the melody on C major, a good way to imagine the melody, assuming you know it, would be to draw a melodic curve around the melody. So that'll be somewhere. Now that's a skip of an octave. Somewhere over, somewhere over. So that pocket, or that pack of notes, is root, octave, 7, 5, somewhere over. So if you draw a curve, it'll be something like that, right? Somewhere over the rainbow. Okay, and that's where it goes into a V shape. Somewhere over the rainbow, over the rainbow. So let's just focus on that. Now to transpose this to, well, let's start with the original scale, which is A flat major. First off, write down the way I like to do it is write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is the same as the 1. Write it on the scale you're currently playing, which is currently C major. So you write under that C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Then under that you write down the new scale. Now if you'd like, you can even write down the shape of the new scale, which will be A flat, in this case A flat. So A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat. This is what we call as piano worms. Now if you want to learn music from a more foundational level, you'll find links to our members only courses, where it starts from from ground zero. You may not even know the notes in music. So there'll be courses waiting for you in a very structured way. You can check that out. But anyway, moving forward. So if you have to transpose something from C to A flat, a quick way to do it would be write down the numbers, write down the scale which you're currently on, C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Then under that, write down A flat major, which is A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat. And now that you've superimposed it on your melodic curve, what you want on the melodic curve should just be the intervals or the scale degrees. So in Somewhere Over the Rainbow, we sing somewhere over the rainbow. That's 1 octave, 7, 5, 6, 7 octave. Or sa sa ni pa da ni sa, sa sa ni pa da ni sa, sa dha pa, in terms of swaras, sa dha pa, way up high, sa sa ni pa da ni sa, sa dha pa. So you map that out on A flat major and sa sa. Now first sing your sa. And a good motivation for especially a melody would be to sing the riff sa sa ni pa da ni sa, or somewhere over the rainbow. And you know the first two notes are octaves. So get that packet. And then somewhere over the rainbow, somewhere over the rainbow, somewhere. And the neighboring scales to A flat in the circle of fifths would always be very similar from a fingering perspective, because the scales that are neighbors of A flat, the clockwise and the counterclockwise scales, namely E flat major and D flat major, will have almost all but one note the same. So if you practice it on A flat and now just drift to E flat and A flat, your fingering will be the same. Well, almost. In this case, it is the same. If you take it on D flat, see, same fingering. So if I'm on A flat, I close my eyes and go here to D flat. See, I don't make a mistake. Now E flat. See, that's not because yes, I kind of know the notes, but the shape of the notes, the black to white correlation remains the same, at least between A flat to D flat to E flat. And similarly, now if you do it on C, you can easily do it on F, G. You just have to look out for that F sharp. So it'll always be all but one. So my advice to you when you tackle something like playing an exercise on all 12 scales or all 12 keys, look at the circle of fifths, and if you began with C, don't do its neighbors yet. Go all the way to the diameter of the circle, which will be F sharp, and play the melody. So you'll have to put in some work. Okay, and then go to the 3 o'clock of C, which will be A. Okay, so C, G, D, A. A is at 3 o'clock. Then go to the 3 o'clock in the counterclockwise direction, which should be C, F, B flat, E flat. So C, F sharp, then A, E flat, and then start tackling their neighbors. So if you do C, F and G become easy. G, and then we have the neighbors of A, which will be D and E, very similar. D, B also, very similar. Okay, and then you do E flat, which I've already discussed. So that's one way to tackle it. So the best way I think you should practice anything, especially melodies, and also to make it very musical, would be the circle of fifths, either counterclockwise or clockwise. And just roll with it on all 12 keys. So if you started with C, C major, F major, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, D flat, F sharp, which is at 6 o'clock, B major, E major, D major, G, back to C major. So if you go counterclockwise, even if you go clockwise, it'll sound a lot more musical. It won't sound like you're doing an exercise. And so on. Even though the chromatic approach or the semitone up down or the whole tone up down would be useful because it'll test your knowledge of, do I know that new shape instantly? Okay, so these are a few things when practicing a melody or anything on the piano. The way in which you can go about your practice, my advice would be map out the circle of fifths first and plot out a square or a diamond shape between your scales. That would mean 4 points. So if it's C, it'll be C to F sharp to A to E flat. So you're plotting that out and then you practice those 4 scales really well. And what you'll realize is it starts getting exponentially easier. Because once you do these 4 scales, the time taken to do the remaining 8 will probably be quarter of the time it took for you to do the 4 in the first place. Okay, so that's about a melody line. Let's now progress forward and see how this works for a chord progression. I'm just taking the simple chorus of Africa on the original scales. So that's A major. So they go 6, 4, 1, 5. So I bless the rains down in Africa. So when you do a chord progression, always do it with different inversions. So if you see my notes, you'll find I've written F sharp to D to A to E. Then I've written down every single inversion. So each point would be your exercise. So any chord progression you ever do, you should be able to practice it in a sum total of 3 ways. So if you look at it on the keys, if I start F sharp minor in the root position, I bless the rains down in Africa. You shift from here to this D, to this A, to this E. And then if you go, that's the first inversion. And then second inversion. you have to do. Now, the easiest pattern we've put out for you would be the 1:4 ratio. You 4 hits in the right hand and 1 hit in the left hand. You can also arpeggiate it, but maybe do a different pattern for each inversion shape. Maybe some arpeggios here, starting on the high note, high, low, middle, low. And the second inversion, something more salsa. So I'm doing a treccio, 1E and a 2E and a 3E. Of course, this is not Africa anymore, but it's more of a dance song. And once you've done this, then again the same process, try to transpose it on the other scale. So do the similar ones first. So what are the scales similar to A major? That will be D major and E major, correct? So on D major or on any scale, what was our original chord progression? It was 6-4-1-5, correct? So you should now map out the chords of D, and what is the 6-4-1-5 of the D major scale. So that will be B minor, G major, D major, A major. Map out the inversions. Do it with those patterns. E major, which is the other neighbor of A major. So E major scale, you can literally write the scale and map it out. What is the 6? C sharp, 4, A, 1, E, 5, B. And just remember, in a major scale, as you should know with all scales, the theory of the scale. 1, 4, 5 will form major chords, 2, 3, 6 will form minor chords, and 7 would be the lone diminished chord. So on E major, it will be start with the 6. It out before you play with a chord progression. Let's now take a riff. Let's do, I think, my favorite rock song, prog rock song of all time, Carry On My Wayward Son. If you want me to do a full lesson on this song, let me know in the comments. It's an awesome song. You must have heard it. So there are lots of riffs in the song. Like we'll just take the main one, but there's also that one. Then there's and then so we won't have time for all. We'll just do okay. So you have the notation there. Let me play it. Let's just learn the riff first. On C major, chill there. The best way to learn a riff, in my opinion, would be break this down into bits and pieces. So, learn that. And now learn that on different keys. And then break it up. So, then Da 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 da. That's the next thing. Very similar to the first part, right? Da na na na, da na na na. So let's do that. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. That's on C. That's on E flat. And then that's on B flat and so on. So try and see by ear when it's a riff. The intervals are going to be very simple. It's not going to be like Somewhere Over the Rainbow with every scale degree to a point that you have to write it down. With riffs, it's always going to be pretty much on the minor pentatonic scale for the most part, or the major pentatonic scale on the most part, or maybe it'll just be the root, the fifth, or just 3 notes, or just a few of them at least. Okay, so try and use your ear to move it from scale to scale. So maybe if you do pa ba 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 pa ba ba ba, and if you want to go up, now sing that note. So my approach would be sing the note and then pa da ba de pa da ba da. Oops. That's the one. Da 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 de da 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 de. There we go. Use your ear and kind of trial and error it, and the finger width will probably stay the same, will most likely stay the same, because you're transposing. And it's just the white to black key movements you'll have to figure out. Let's finish the riff. So part 1. Now tan tan ta da da, tan tan ta da da, tan tan ta da da. So if you're in the key of A minor, so that'll be 5 7 flat, 5 4 3 flat. So it goes ta na 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 ta na 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 ta. Similarly, and then back to A minor. That's another packet. So so that'll be 4 7 flat, 4 6. Assuming A is the root. So if you look at a riff, my advice is always to break it up into bits and pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you want, or if that's too much, you can combine as one piece. So usually riffs on the piano are played with both hands unless it's too difficult for you, but you can even play it with one hand and then the right hand will be playing chords like there we go. And so on, and then transpose it to all the other keys. We have it notated for you. You can check it out. There's a MIDI file as well. And last but not least, what about a very small lick, something that could be used, maybe something very bluesy as we normally do? How would you approach transposing that? Well, I'll take blues because in a 12-bar setting, you're going to have the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord. So when you have a blues lick, or most licks in general, when we use the word lick, try to transpose it at least alongside the 1, the 4, and the 5 intervals. So let's take a lick like this. First, of course, practice it with the snaps. And when you're doing a lick, understand, is it starting at a pickup, or is it starting at the 1, or is it delaying? Is it starting on the 2? In this case, it's starting before the 1. A 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 1, right? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. That's the lick. That goes well with a C chord. Okay, and now we have to transpose it. Just go here and try and now it's your job to find it. Back to, and the 5. So that makes the same lick that you came up with. Usually these licks, we come up with them, it just happens. It just hits you, at the spur of the moment. So I'd advise you to, first of all, when you're practicing a lick, record it. Record just that phrase onto your voice memo app on a phone. You could have come up with that in the shower or wherever. And don't forget to record it. And before you practice a lick, record it in a very crude, very natural way. And then figure out which is the scale you sang it on. Did you sing it on the key of C? Okay, well and good. Maybe it's almost C. So then blues it up. So 12 bar it up. So practice the same lick on the 1, the 4 and the 5, and you'll realize the shape will be pretty similar. See, F is almost a carbon copy from C in terms of fingering. And it... So you'll end up realizing the 1, 4, 5 or even the minors, the 3 minor clusters will all have the same shape if you learn a lick on those roots. Okay, so in this lecture we've taken a melody, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. We figure out how to transpose it. The best way for a melody is to write down the melodic curve, as I call it, where you plot out the shape as things go high, low, etc. For a chord progression, you need a lot of writing again. Write down the chord progression, write down the general progression, write down all the available chords and practice it on 3 shapes from 3 different starting points, because each chord has 3 positions. Then if it's a riff, make sure you break it down into bits and pieces. Usually these riffs, you may lose time, and it's very important to play riffs with a band. You're going to end up playing it with a drummer and a bass player and an ensemble. So you don't want to be the reason why, so you don't want to lose time. So break it down and then transpose it. Okay, and finally a lick is something you come up with wherever, but try to then map it out, record it in a voice memo, see what is that parent scale, and then practice it around the 1, 4, 5 axis of chords. And that's pretty much how you can practice music in a very comprehensive way on the piano. And if you ask me, I've done a video on the things you need to know, or the things you need to work on to be a professional pianist or a professional keyboardist. I'll leave you a link in the description. But one of those very, very important things was you should be able to transpose at will. You need to be able to play anything that you are given on multiple scales, especially when you play with other people, especially if you're dealing with singers and the singer might want to change key. You should probably ask them in advance if there is a key change, so it will save your work. But in any case, it's a good practice to do whatever it is you're working on all the 12 keys. Now, the direction of movement of the 12 keys could be semitone up and down, semitone down, it's chromatic. Then you could do whole tone motion. That's skipping 2 or 2 half steps. Then the circle of fifths, as I spoke about. So these are the 3 common ways to work out. Yes, you could also practice along an interval. So you could do and then maybe. So I practiced along the interval of a major third. I could also practice along the interval of a minor third. So it'll be that's C, E flat, and then F sharp, and then A. So that cluster of minor thirds or this cluster of major thirds is also a nice way to practice. So let me know in the comments if you'd like me to dive into these specific songs a bit further. I'll be happy to do an entire video on these, and also any other doubts that you might have and what you thought about the lesson in general. So thanks a ton for watching the lesson, and don't forget to get my notes and the notation on our Patreon, and I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.